Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Going Live with Global Learning. My name is Elizabeth O'Brien, and I'm the International Program Coordinator here in the Global Learning Department. It's hard to believe it's September again. We're back for another academic year, and we're very excited to be kicking off this series with a few different interviews. So today I'm joined by Zach, who is a Community College Initiative Program participant. The Community College Initiative Program is a U.S. Department of State funded program that provides emerging leaders from countries around the world with a 10-month non-degree cultural exchange program for them to develop technical skills, enhance their leadership capabilities, and improve English proficiencies, all while getting an experience at a U.S. community college. So we're very fortunate to have Zach with us. Zach, why don't you introduce yourself for us?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be in this interview, but mostly, I guess, being part of the CCI program is really thrilling. Traveling to the US for the first time and getting all those different benefits based on the pillars, cultural exchange, most exciting, academics, love it. We get to interact with the community, I guess that's the volunteering part. But overall, the experience has been great and I'm super happy to be here.
Well, great. Yeah, it's been fun. I know you talked a little bit already about what you've been doing in the past month, so I'm excited to hear what else is going good for you. But yeah, why don't you tell us, you're from South Africa. Tell us a little bit more about South Africa.
Yes, I'm from South Africa. South Africa is a very diverse country. I guess we have, in terms of race, we have literally every race because South Africa is also a little bit more like the US. We have people coming from different parts of the world. So we have white people of different descents. We have black people, different descents. We have Indians, Chinese, and everyone. So diversity-wise, we are very diverse, but also in terms of, what is it? Is it typography or geography? We sort of like have different terrains in the country. Some places are like flat. And then when you go to places like Cape Town or the Western Cape in general, and Mpumalanga in general, they're very mountainous. You see this beautiful greenery. We have wildlife, a lot of it. So overall, yeah, I think we're an amazing country. I love the diversity in it.
Yeah, It sounds incredible and beautiful. I've never been, but just kind of listening from you and from other students, I would love to go one day. So.
Please do.
Yes, I'll have to make it on a trip list. So I know you're heavily invested back in South Africa in humanitarian rights work and just the Sustainable Development Goals. So could you tell us a little bit more about what the Sustainable Development Goals are, what they mean to you?
So to give a little bit of context, I have white skin, but I'm not white. I'm fully black. I just have albinism. So growing up, I tend to notice some disparities or inequalities between how some other people will be treated compared to myself. And I got to learn that, okay, what I have is some sort of like a disability and whatnot, and people tend to be a little bit biased or prejudicial towards other people. So I got interested in leadership. Now, in leadership, you get to meet a lot of different people who introduce you to a lot of different initiatives, and the UN has been I'd say the leader in terms of trying to get all countries involved in resolving issues such as inequality, discrimination, ending poverty, quality education. So the Sustainable Development Goals, they're basically 17, but mostly, I would say mainly they focus on ending poverty, increasing economic participation, increasing equality, and ensuring that overall we have a good future. So it's having a relationship with people, but it doesn't also end there. It's also having a good relationship with the environment within which you live. So protecting your land, protecting your plants, protecting your seas. Yeah. So it's not just a relationship between you and another person. It's just a relationship between yourself and the universe and everything in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you highlighted that this is something that the United Nations kind of created. So it's really bringing together the world to address some of these challenges that are plaguing so many countries.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your work in South Africa and what you've been doing related to the Sustainable Development Goals.
So going to high school was not difficult, but I guess I also like the idea of traveling. So I went to a special school. And funny enough, when I got there, I was not allowed to stay on campus. Yeah, I had to go and find my own space. But then I later found out that the reason why I could not be allowed to stay on campus is because the infrastructure was dilapidated. So what I would see on camera and video is basically Instagram Live compared to what other students were experiencing. So to give context, my high school was created by one late doctor called Aretha Suter from Switzerland. She got into a community and realized that there were actually a lot of people with disabilities who could not participate economically, who could not be able to afford to provide for their needs. So she created an NGO wherein she would bring all these people with different needs and teach them handcrafts, how to make candles, how to make this and that, baskets and whatnot. And eventually they felt the edge to actually incorporate official school curriculum. So they petitioned the Department of Education to incorporate that, and they were not able to do that, I guess. So there were many protests, negotiations, and whatnot that were not successful. But in 2016, I eventually joined the struggle, I guess. And I was the lead negotiator with the Department of Education. They committed like 80 million rands and more, obviously, that was spent to build the school infrastructure. So as we speak, there are classes, there are hostels, as in accommodations, and different facilities to cater for students with disabilities from first grade up to the last grade, which is 12 in South Africa. So that's where my interest in leadership and sort of like humanitarian causes was more sparked, because I realized that I had the leadership potential to, change people's lives and make them better. So I went to study the Bachelor of Laws, the University of Johannesburg.
Okay.
And then I also studied like compliance and a whole lot of different things. But overall, I'm much more focused on the law part of it, because law sort of like gives you that guarantee to say, okay, yes, the government is not doing this and that, or say the corporate world or the community is not doing this and that. But when you petition the court, you sort of like have a guarantee that something will have to happen one way or another. So that is why I prefer to focus specifically on the law, with the main purpose of actually making our lives better.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's been really interdisciplinary between the law, the compliance, your passion for human rights and equality. And I know from that, you kind of took an initiative to create your own nonprofit. Could you tell us about that experience and how that has gone for you?
Yes, I do have an NGO that I'm running. It's called the Protectorate Agency of Albinism Affairs. Our main focus really it was to lobby for and fight for the interests of people with albinism, because although we are a young democracy in South Africa that has just tried to improve the lives of everybody, I felt that a specific marginalized group is being left behind. We have so many different programs focusing even in disability, but there's just a little less invested in terms of people with albinism. And we find issues such as not being able to access education, not because the schools are not good enough, but because there's not much awareness in terms of like what makes us different and what does it mean. Because we have these African myths that, if you're a person with albinism, it means you're a curse, or if you're a person with albinism, you're a blessing. But either way, it's a double-edged sword, because there are sort of like different benefits and challenges that come with both.
Yeah.
So the organization focuses mainly on trying to provide financial resources if they want to go to school, try to find bursaries for them, laptops, if they use laptops or tablets, buying them foods, giving stipends for different things. Sunscreen is very important for us because South Africa is blazingly hot. Mm-hmm. But you find that some hospitals do not have those free resources. So one way or another, we have to purchase, and they're very expensive.
Yeah.
That's where we come in and try to assist. Clothing as well, psychological services. Sometimes we experience a lot of challenges that we can't deal with them. So we in our organization, we try to connect the victims, I would say, with experienced psychologists who will be able to help them and try to deal with their challenges differently. Legally speaking, we have organizations such as Section 27, we have the Center for Child Law, we have the Human Rights Commission. So these are some of the big established organizations in South Africa that focus on the legal aspects of things, but also pursuant to ensuring that we are protecting human rights. So these are some of the organizations that we partner with in terms of, trying to do our little effort.
Yeah, and I imagine kind of from what you're saying that as you've gone through this process, more challenges have come up. And so it's adapting to those challenges, finding resources in the community for different people. And I think the other thing that kind of spoke to me as we have our discussion about the Sustainable Development Goals is how many other goals you're trying to address in addition to equality. You've got the no poverty, the economic advancement, infrastructure, and just making sure that the needs of each person are met so that they can succeed individually, but also as a global world.
So I'm interested also in affordable energy, clean and affordable energy. So the concept of decarbonization is basically to say which alternative sources out of, say, coal, which is considered very dirty. What other ways can we be able to produce electricity? So I believe that while the UN is on the right path in terms of leading countries into, decarbonization processes, encouraging everyone to participate, there's, I would say, some sort of like an energy of pushing countries into specific things such as solar and wind. While those are very productive, but I think the context of each country must be taken into account, because you find that, yes, the country must be clean, but at what expense, right? So now, if a country such as South Africa has to move away from coal immediately and try to push solar and wind, at what expense does that come? We experience issues such as blackouts, right, for long hours, because we do not properly strategize on how to incorporate the wind and solar into our energy grid. The problem is that they are also inadequate. Right. So the energy produced by solar and wind has to be stored somewhere. So there are also complexities that come into having those resources. They take, so for example, solar, you need a large area to lay all those panels, right? We have the desert and whatnot, but we still need things such as cables. Cables are made from copper. Copper is abundant, but it's also difficult to mine. When you look at countries such as in Latin America, they experience a lot of challenges such as water shortages, because the mining companies need water and chemicals to process those minerals that they're mining, right? So it has an effect to them in a negative way, while also trying to clean our energy sources in South Africa. So my question has always been, how clean is clean energy when it comes at a cost of another life, right? We can speak about electric vehicles, but the cobalt that we use to manufacture those batteries comes from usually the Congo. And what's the situation in Congo? It's very bad. So when we are looking at clean energy, I feel like most countries or all countries must be allowed at least the autonomy to find the best alternative source for them that will work. Because if South Africa was allowed a little bit more time instead of being forced or pushed into trying to adopt these things as quick as we were forced, we would not be having blackouts. Blackouts affects things such as schooling, right? Children have to go to school, use computers and this and that. When there are blackouts, it means progress also stags or it slows down. There are hospitals. When we have blackouts, it means hospitals must also be shut down. That's costing lives. We have economics run on having electricity. Even the very video that we were making progress, and we are taking a lot more time talking about these things because we have access to electricity. When we don't have access, it means everything else stands still. Right.
No, and you make an extremely good point, right? Like sometimes as we're creating these goals, and I think sometimes when people comment on how the Sustainable Development Goals, like our targets are approaching 2030, and here we are, 2024, and there's discussion on if if as a globe or as a world we're going to be able to meet these goals, you make some valid points of, okay, we've created these goals, but what voices were brought into the discussion to ensure that they could be met in a reasonable deadline with the resources provided. So that kind of, I know we're wrapping up on time, so I'll have to end shortly. But that brings me to my last question for you is, we're in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and there's lots to be done in our local community to contribute to these goals and to ensure that people are having quality lives that will be sustainable for the next generation. What are some actions that you find helpful or that people in the community could take to address some of these goals?
Right. So the best thing about SDGs is that they literally relate to everything and anything. First off, when we're looking at children, right, we can do things such as having a big park where children can be able to come back from school and play around there. That takes takes focus from having to do something that they are not supposed to be doing because they have something recreational that they can engage in.
Yeah.
But overall, when we're looking at the schooling system, we can also incorporate SDGs in our classes to say, okay, when we are transporting a resource from one place to another, how does that affect the economy or the environment?
Yeah.
So how learning in classrooms, how these different SDGs can relate to all of these different courses, sort of like gives us the awareness that we need. It gets us excited because we're all taking courses that we are passionate about. So incorporating the SDGs will make sure that we are also becoming passionate, and then we try to come up and strategize on ideas on what we can do in the community. One controversial topic that I presented on a few days ago was period poverty, right? So schools do have these sanitary pads.
Yeah.
But what about children who have to now go home and face that challenge again, whose parents are not working, they do not have any sort of like financial support? What do they do? So I feel like communities can come up with these sanitary banks wherein we always have like $1 or $5 to spare. Just buy a pack, just throw it in the box. Whomever needs it, they will go to the organization that will be managing that whole process and get a few. That is a way of supporting people in the best way, because you think it's not important, but it's something very important. You can do things such as digitalization of communication. When you go to these orientations, you get a lot of different papers and whatnot. What we can do instead of papers, just have a QR code. Let somebody scan that thing. It can come up in a picture form or a PDF form. You read quickly. If you're interested, you're going to sign up and whatnot, instead of having these papers that you have to take up and then you throw them in the bin without having to read them. Right. So there are so many different ideas, but because we're pressed for time, I guess we can have different conversation with people in person, try to encourage and teach and create awareness.
Yeah, I think that summarizes very well of awareness is such a big component of everything, right? Whether it's the Sustainable Development Goals, recycling, inequality, just helping everyone understand the challenges that each person goes through and what actions we can take to make that more sustainable. So, well, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking some time today and just sharing a little bit about yourself, South Africa, and your excitement for the goals. Thank you to all of you who joined us today on another episode of Going Live with Global Learning. Tune in next week for the next installment, and have a great semester.